Good evening and welcome to Science Eye News, where we provide all news regarding the field of science and psychology. Tonight it is Tuesday, where we discuss science experiments gone wrong. Take it over, Liz.
Thank you so much. And now to discuss one of the most famous studies of obedience in psychology, the Stanley Milgram experiment. Stanley Milgram was an American psychologist and a Yale professor who was motivated by the Hitler trial to develop this experiment. The purpose of this experiment was to test obedience versus personal conscience, how far a person would go against their own morals in fear of disobeying a higher order. Milgram conducted this experiment to examine the justifications proved by Nazi soldiers, stating that they committed atrocious acts due to obedience. The experiment models a real-life scenario where the Nazi soldiers were ordered to inflict torturous punishments on the prisoners under authority. However, the experiment is classified as unethical. The participants of the study were men within the ages of 20 and 50 years old. The table shows the distribution of how many participants were present within each age category. The categories were 20 to 30 years old, 30 to 40 years old, and 40 to 50 years old, and also their occupations, which were workers, skilled and unskilled, businessmen, sales, white collar, along with other professions, which all added up to 40 participants. You may ask, what was the procedure of the Stanley Milgram experiment? Well, let me break it down for you. There's a pair of participants, one including the actual subject and one fake test subject. The real subject was led to believe that there was a fair chance of being selected as the shocker or the one being shocked. However, the fake subject would always be selected as the person getting shocked due to a fixed drawing. Within this graphic, you can see that there's an experimenter who essentially acts like the guard, authorizing the subject to administer the shock every time the fake test subject answers the question wrong. With every trial, the fake test subject inevitably answers the question wrong on purpose. As a result, the subjects were led to believe the fake test subject in the other room is experiencing excruciating pain from the electrodes attached to his body. The shocks range from slight shock to severe shock to death. Here we can see the real images from the experiment that shows what was used and how the experiment was set up. The image on the left is a fake test subject being equipped with electrodes that shock them in order to manipulate the real test subject. Then, the real test subject was separated from the fake test subject. Most of the reactions from the fake test subjects were recorded. Furthermore, the image on the right shows the machine they used to shock the fake test subjects in the other room. And now you will see a video clip from the actual experiment.
Here, you have no right to keep me here. Let me out. Let me out of here. Let me out.
Continue, please.
Let me out of here. My eyes bother me. Let
Go
me
on.
out. Let me out.
Responsible for it. Red. That is incorrect. This will be at 3:30.
This table contains the data from the experiment. The left side shows the increments of voltage and the right side shows the amount of participants that stopped administering the shocks at a certain voltage level. As you can see, no one stopped before the intense shock category. And the second half of the table shows that 14 people went through the shock until the very extreme category of voltage labeled XXX. Moreover, the data that shows that 26 of the participants administered the highest level of shock possible. Furthermore, Milgram also states in his study that upon the command of the experimenter, each of the 40 subjects went beyond the expected break-off point. No subject stopped prior to administering shock level 20, and later on it also states that of the 40 subjects, 26 obeyed the order of the experimenter to the end, which supports the data presented before. The Milgram experiment violated ethics in multiple aspects. This experiment contributed to deception, took away the right to withdraw from the experiment, and failed to protect the mental health of the participants involved. Since the participants believed they were truly inflicting physical pain on the fake test subjects, this resulted in psychological problems that lasted after the experiment. The picture here shows the observations that were made regarding the participants' behavior during the study, and it states how subjects heaved sighs of relief, mopped their brows, rubbed fingers over their eyes, or nervously fumbled cigarettes. Some shook their heads, apparently in regret. All of these indicate the emotional effect of the study. The participants experienced extreme PTSD and had to receive therapy to repair cognitive function. When the participants were told about the scenario, there was no informed consent received for approval. The Milgram experiment failed to prioritize the safety of their participants, which any research study should be able to recognize. It is important to distinguish between ethics and legality. While learning about ethics, we find ourselves confusing it with the term legal. Something that is legal can still be unethical because ethics are not governed by law, but follow a moral set of rules. The Stanley Milgram experiment might be considered legal at the time since there was no harm committed against the participants during the experiment, but is still unethical since their mental health heavily deteriorated from their experience and they might not be able to manage themselves after. Advocacy for ethics in research is very important because participants must be at the highest priority. Ethics in psychiatric research must clearly be defined because there is a gray area that can take advantage of innocent people. Research methodology must be verified and consent/accountability is important when conducting an experiment. After the Milgram experiment, Stanley Milgram failed to take accountability, saying that deception was a necessary factor, but this was the expense of the participants. However, in the next few slides, we provide examples of experiments testing authority and obedience in ethical ways, showing that it can be done. This Stanley study wanted to test conformity, authority, and obedience. However, during the same era, there were multiple experiments that tested obedience and conformity in an ethical way. The Ash line experiment, conducted by researcher Solomon Ash, is an excellent example. In this study, the participant was placed in a room with other subjects. However, the subjects were part of the experiment, but the participant was unaware of that. This could be referred to as a single blind study. They were shown two images. One consisted of a line, and the other had 3 different lines. The individuals in the room had to agree upon which line of the 3 was the best match with the individual line. The subjects lied and said an obvious incorrect answer. However, several of the participants agreed with the other individuals because they did not want to be proven wrong in a social setting. This is similar to the Milgram study because the participants had to follow the authority and conform to their expectations. This tested conformity in societal pressure in an ethical way. Other examples include a remake of the Ash experiment for teenagers and another study that includes adults and their conformity to robots. To give more ethical examples of obedience and authority, let's consider some of these scenarios. We obtain these examples from our real-life experiences. For example, in a study, a teacher is in the position of authority, while the students are the subjects. Every time a student asks to go to the bathroom, the teacher says, "You can go, but I would prefer if you did not right now." This can test authority and obedience because of how the student responds. If the student does not go to the bathroom because the teacher prefers that they don't, then this provides more insight into authority and how it connects to obedience. Students would prioritize impressing their teacher and stay without going to the bathroom, but this still exemplifies obedience to authority. However, the students are still given the choice to leave if they wanted, which the Milgram experiment failed to do. Furthermore, in a second example, suppose a boss is in a position of authority and their employees are the subjects. The boss might ask an employee to send an unprofessional email to an invalid email address and states, "I would highly appreciate if you send this email, but it is optional." The employee's response to whether or not they should send the email tests the impact of authority and obedience in an ethical manner and if the employee is willing to please them. Moreover, in the teacher and boss's statements, they're still giving an option for the subjects to back out, so it is not unethically forced upon them. In conclusion, medical ethics must be considered when conducting an experiment or a case study. According to the American Psychological Association and British Psychological Society, some of the ethical components include informed consent, debriefing of the purpose of the study to the participants, protection of participants, which include privacy and safety, confidentiality, and the option for participants to withdraw from the study and respect for all subjects. Okay, so let me ask you your opinion. If subject 1 gives their consent to participate in the experiment and is safe and has their privacy, would it be ethical for them to participate in the experiment? The answer is yes. It checks all of the right boxes. Let's try another. If subject 2 does not give their consent, but their safety and privacy is in the experiment's best interest, would it be ethical for them to participate in the experiment? The answer is no. It would need to check both boxes: consent from the participant and their privacy and safety in their best interest. If subject 3 consents to participate, but their safety and privacy is not the experiment's top priority, is the experiment ethical? Again, the answer would be no. It does not check both boxes, and to be considered ethical, it needs to.
And thank you everybody for joining us today and learning about ethics and their importance by discussing the Stanley Milgram experiment. See you next Tuesday for more. Good night!